at its core, people buy feelings, not products, right? And we need to sort of just connect with the feeling and the emotions that we're trying to create in our audience and connect at a very human level.
Before we start the show, I'd like to talk to you about Brandwatch, which is a digital consumer intelligence company. It helps businesses better understand their consumers and buyers with clever software that enables them to analyze conversations from across the web and social media. To find out more, visit brandwatch.com, and you can sign up for up-to-the-minute consumer insights in your inbox each week at brandwatch.com/bulletin. And it's worth mentioning that my business, Automated Creative, uses Brandwatch every single day, and our business would be impossible to deliver without it. So it's of real pride that I welcome them as partners for this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. My name is Tom Ollerton. I'm the founder of Automated Creative, and this is a podcast about the future of marketing. Every week or so, I have the pleasure and the privilege of interviewing one of our leaders. And this week, that's so true, I'm on a call with Elizabeth Windram, who is Global Head of Mobility, Marketing, Masterbrand, and Membership at Uber. Elizabeth, for anyone who doesn't know who you are and what you do, could you give the audience an overview?
Absolutely. Hi, Tom, and thank you so much for having me. It's a real privilege to be here. I lead global mobility marketing for Uber, which is a new role for me. I joined Uber just about 5 months ago. Most recently, I led marketing at JetBlue Airlines, which is based here in New York City. And before that, I was out at Barefoot Wine, where I had the privilege of leading a wine that was making the world a better place. I ended up in marketing after business school. I had started out my career in finance, where I spent time in an investment bank and in private equity. So a little bit of a shift there, but I always value that time that I had there, and I will never look back. I love marketing, and I'm just so grateful that I found it.
Fantastic. So, and you've got some pretty fancy job titles and brands on your LinkedIn. So, what I need to know is, are you a marketing book person or not? Are you someone who shuns the book in exchange for real life hands-on experience, or do you have marketing books that you recommend and buy for your team and so on?
I love marketing books. I'm so glad that you asked me that. I'm always reading the latest marketing material, marketing academic material, whatever I can get my hands on. I really think that the reason perhaps that I do that is that I want marketing to become much more of a science. And it has been over recent years, but I'm always trying to also keep up. So, I have a number of books that I love that I tell everyone to read. So I love The Hero and the Outlaw. Just to really dig into brand archetypes, if people want to get very wonky and academic. I also love Denise Leon. My team will laugh because I literally buy this book for everybody. It's called What Great Brands Do. It's about brand building principles, and it's just a really great, clear tome about what separates great brands from the rest.
And in What Great Brands Do, what are the key things that you remember from that book, or bang out in a meeting to prove that you're right?
Oh yeah, I bang it out all the time. Maybe I'll even bang these out on this podcast.
Yeah, do please.
I think some of the really clear ideas around great brands starting inside, and that, you can't sort of paint your brand on the wall and have a logo and then not have that brand ethos come through every choice that you make, including those you make internally. That's just a really great chapter. I think also great brands sweat the small stuff is another theme that comes through in her work, that your brand experience comes through in every touch point that you have with your consumers, and none are, too small to get right and be thoughtful about.
Do you know, that reminds me of something? I was chatting to our head of client strategy at Automated Creative, Amy Wright. I'm very pleased that she's listening to this. But she said that we were talking about work culture and office culture and how we establish ours, because we're a small business. And she said that an office culture is how you feel after every single interaction with anyone in that organization, whether it's an email or a WhatsApp or a message at the weekend or a drinking session or a holiday or whatever it is. And I thought that's so true, isn't it? It's the culmination of all of those tiny touch points. And that's really echoed in what you just said there. Am I reading that right?
Yeah. No, precisely.
So come on, I'm keen to know more about the books. What's your next go-to book that you buy for people or quote most often?
What do I do? I love Seth Godin. I honestly do. I listen to his podcast and I have a number of his books. I just think I think people make marketing very, very complicated. So maybe this is at odds with what I said earlier about, it has to be a science and rigor, but I think a lot of these books help to simplify what we're really doing here, which is connecting our businesses with people and bringing humanity to our work and into the way that we do storytelling. And just a lot of times it's worth remembering that. I think it's just very easy to get into a day-to-day job where you're very busy and you're doing the things every day, right? And you've got meetings and you've got deliverables and you're leading your team. And it's for me, it's really good to just be reminded of what we're really doing here, which is not perhaps as complicated as we all make it.
So I've got a question on that. So I've interviewed someone on this podcast before, and it really struck with me what he said. He said that you need to remove the brand and the BS, basically, that like it's a human talking to a human, right? You're a human at a brand and you're communicating with a consumer, but yet we put all of this stuff in between, right? Which I think is part of your point. So then there's a tension, isn't there, when it comes to performance, right? So ultimately, I don't know what your KPIs are, but cost per acquisition of new users or repeat users will come up in some conversations you have somewhere, I assume. And yet all of the KPIs we have are really inhuman. We've got view-through rate, view completion rate, cost per quality, page view, lifetime value. All of these things are really not human sounding things, are they? But yet, if you use your common sense, that we need to remove all of the guff in between just from one human talking to another. So I'm curious to know how you marry up that truth that we need to make it simple with the fact that you work for a heavily tech-led organization that will demand all kinds of metrics all over the place.
No, of course, it's interesting coming to a tech company and even an airline, right, to sort of talk about the need for humanity. So look, here's what I'd say about the question you just asked and the point where we're circling around. We need all of that data. We need to be able to prove our worth. Marketers often, don't last long in organizations. And perhaps that's because we're not as data driven as a business requires us to be. There needs to be proof. People want to understand return on investment. I want to understand return on investment. Is what we're doing working? Is it efficient? So we have to have all that inhuman data behind us. But at its core, people buy feelings, not products, right? And we need to sort of just connect with the feeling and the emotions that we're trying to create in our audience and connect at a very human level and remember that. In thinking about my own personal experience and why I can sort of marry these two things in undergrad, indulge me here, I double majored in economics and drama. And I didn't understand myself, actually. I was like, I like these things. There was something about economics, sort of the behavioral economics, especially, that just really resonated with me. I liked that there was math and there were answers, and it also felt super practical, like I could get a job. after college, which was probably a good thing. But drama always really called to me too. I can't act. I'm terrible actor, dancer, singer, like you name it. I'm on the board of a theater and I love that, but always very behind the scenes. But there's always been something for me about drama and storytelling. And it took me a really long time to figure out that what I was looking for was marketing, which sounds like a funny thing to, spend 15 years searching for when the answer was perhaps there all along. But I honestly share that because I think that's just really important for every marketer to remember that they're an economist and also perhaps a thespian as well, right? And so we have to do this storytelling and connect with people emotionally. And then that's where our brand will ultimately win and be distinguished. But we do have to measure, the activities that we're doing in that pursuit. It's both.
I think the thespian economist is a great URL.
Or we could do like one act plays about great marketing campains.
Yeah. Oh,
or like the downfall, it could be very Shakespearean actually.
Yeah. Well, something my background was in music, and then equally kind of sort of fell in love with marketing when I realized that you could be creative and make money at the same time, which is quite difficult. So I'd like to know, in amongst all of that, do you have like a top marketing tip, a bit of silver bullet advice you can share?
Yeah, a lot of times marketers are struggling to figure out when their brand should show up. There's a lot of conversation about brands needing to be in culture or, very much responding to issues in the world that matter to people, that matter to their consumers, that are happening in their community. And it's, I think, difficult for brands and leaders to figure out what voice their brand should have and when they should show up. And we have all kinds of tools. And I think Uber's fantastic about this, very clear on our mission and our values. So these things help guide where and how you show up. But the advice that I have for people on that, because it can be rather complicated, is to once again simplify and ask yourself, is my brand mission, my brand ethos, the thing that I believe, our brand believes at its core, is it under pressure? Is it being directly challenged? And if it is, then those are the moments when you have a point of view and not just a right, but an imperative to do or say something. So I think using that rather simple framework and asking yourselves that question can really help you cut through the noise of when to get involved.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, I mean, look, here's an example from this week, which is a very difficult and upsetting topic. But in the Ukraine, I mean, the horror that is happening in the Ukraine right now has touched all of us at a deeply personal level. And here at Uber, we, our mission is changing the way the world moves for the better. And we think a lot about right to move and access to movement and that freedom, right? So that's what our brand is all about. And these people are unable to move freely. And in many cases, they're trying to escape to safety. And so we have not just a right, but an imperative to speak and to act there. And so in that moment, we've helped our employees and our drivers on the ground who need help getting out. We've offered free rides at the border in Poland, so people can get from that border territory to wherever they need to go at no cost. And we're working we're making very large donations as a corporation and standing up a match to help engage our consumer base, where we'll look to partner making donations to the right nonprofits that are engaging on the ground, like the Red Cross and the IRC. So, I think that's a really present example of right to move is challenged. We want to change the way the world moves for the better. That is under pressure. We have a response. And frankly, it's also, a community where we're in. And I think we have an increased obligation there.
This episode of the Shiny New Object podcast is brought to you in partnership with Madfest. Whether it's live in London or streamed online to the global marketing community, you can always expect a distinctive and daring blend of fast-paced content, startup innovation pitches, and unconventional entertainment from Madfest events. You'll find me causing trouble on stage, recording live versions of this podcast, and sharing a beer with the nicest and most influential people in marketing. Check it out at www.madfestlondon.com. So we are sort of at the halfway stage now. So we're going to talk about your shiny new object, but you've refused to tell me what that is, which makes you unique as far as this podcast is concerned. So what is your shiny new object that you're so reluctant to tell me?
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. I'm glad I'm unique in that way. Perhaps we're dialing up the drama a little bit, and perhaps I've overblown my reluctance. But I shiny new object. I think it's really important to stay up to date on, new tech and new tools. I love a test and learn. I'm the first person to jump on a new social media tool that launches, just to sort of start to engage and say, okay, how can marketing use this? How can it help us? But I am also extremely wary of distraction. And while I know nobody wants to get left behind on these things, I think, I don't want to ever surrender our core emotional connection to the whims of the marketplace. And I really believe in a very back to basics kind of thinking, especially right now, as we're all sort of learning how to be human again. I think at the beginning of this, before we started recording, you said we're all entry-level humans again. So all that to be said, I don't have a shiny new object because I think that shiny new object syndrome is like part of our problem right now. And it's all getting very complex and very confusing. And marketers feel like, oh my gosh, how am I going to navigate all of this and still hit my ROI targets? And like, I kind of just want to stop and say, we're building human-centered brands, building emotional connections with our consumers. We don't have to jump on every new trend. So I don't have a shiny new object. I think my shiny new object is to be wary of the shiny new objects. So you got to change the name of the podcast now. And I'm so sorry,
it's a slightly ironic title, but that's fine. It's fine.
Oh, good. Okay, I missed it.
Moving on. So you're wary. I respect that. So is there any method to your wariness? Are you just like, no, we're building a human-centered brand, like, let's stay core. Let's not get distracted. Once again, I would also respect that position. But do you have is there a filter or a process that happens between, you downloading the latest app and having to play with it to saying no? Because I assume you're not just like a blanket no on anything new. You don't strike me as that kind of person at all. But is there a process? Is there a decision-making rationale? Is it a discussion? Help me understand how you get to a no or sometimes a yes.
Yeah. So perhaps we can unpack this. I'm actually sort of a default yes person. I'm kind of like, okay, let's try it. Let's see, let's explore. Maybe it could be, I'll sort of continue to test and learn and explore things. I'll always carve out parts of my budget for just things that like might not work, but might work, and we'll learn, right? We have to keep exploring. So it's not that, it's that I think I get very wary when these trends sort of take over and every marketing conference and podcast and is like, what are you doing about personalization? And it's like, well, I don't even know what that means, right? We've all jumped on this buzzword and we're all like we haven't really thought through, what are we really trying to do, and not being just swept away a little bit with the new tech and like, oh, we can do this and people are expecting this, but really just thinking through, I don't know if I'm making sense, but what is it that we're doing? Let's stay on our program. How does this tool help us do that? If it does, great. If not, I don't need to be sort of jumping on the buzzword.
So what have you nearly said yes to that you said no to recently?
In my old role at JetBlue, I nearly said yes to just jumping on TikTok with some like influencers and, having them begin to tell our story rather than creating our own brand presence. And I actually paused that and said, no, we can't just jump on. And my team actually encouraged me to sort of take that pause. I'll give them a lot of credit because I was like, let's be first. Let's get on there. Let's just, we took that pause to say, no, let's actually watch the space and understand how brands can actually have an authentic voice. And then, we thought our brand was worthy of having the right kind of presence. And we spent some time to figure out what that would look like.
So I'm curious on TikTok. So are you a TikTok user yourself? I'm
passive. I'm very passive. Yeah. So I'm on there and I look at it. My daughter is 8 and she's very helpful because now she's into a lot of these things and she teaches me quite a lot be marketing. She should really be on the payroll.
Tell me what an 8-year-old is teaching her mom about.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think she definitely is aware of, trends and memes and dances and things, right? It's to the point where I almost don't know how, but I think they talk about it at school. And she's also a pretty good read on ads. Like we watched the Super Bowl ads and she certainly had a point of view about like, I like this one, or I didn't get what that was about, or I don't get why that was that brand. And I was actually really impressed with the level of rigor that she was able to bring. I think just her gut is right. It probably helps that I talk about ads and my husband is a copywriter. And so maybe we're just like an ad family. But yeah, it's nice. I think too, having a kid has helped me be a better marketer. I don't know if you've found this, but not only does she help me get really clear about the emotions behind brands and what's resonating and what's not, and what's cool and what's not. I just think having a child has helped me develop whole new levels of empathy.
Give me an example
that I didn't have before. I mean, now I have a very weird comment, but you said weird is okay on this comment. Now, when I see people, even if they're frustrating me, I remember that they're somebody's baby. And that really helps me. I think, we're all just humans. And we all, have a mom who loves them just as much as I love her. And it really helps me to just remember that. Maybe we shouldn't need that reminder, but I think becoming a mom really unpacked that for me. Also, by the way, like you just never know what's going on for people. So the pandemic, I think this has been discussed ad nauseum now, but right, it was very rough on everyone for their own reasons. But people having young children, my husband did a lot of this work, but trying to teach first grade in the living room while holding down jobs on Zoom was not easy. And so I think just keeping that with us as we re-enter into the new normal and reminding ourselves that even outside the pandemic, you never know what's really going on in someone's life and how many things they're juggling. And we have to bring that level of compassion to one another, even in our work situations.
And that is a beautiful place to finish this podcast. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. So if someone wants to get in touch with you, where would you like them to do that? And what makes a great outreach message to you?
I respond really well to ideas. So, just if you have a random thought, I'm here for it. I love Twitter. So I'm at ES Windram on Twitter. If you want to send me a note there, that's good.
Fantastic. Well, look, I really enjoyed that. That went all over the place. Elizabeth, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, just before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to write a review of the Shiny New Object podcast on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, whatever it's called these days, or whichever podcast provider you use. We're an indie podcast, so it would go a long way for us if you could just share the word and give us a bit of a support on those channels. That'd just be fantastic. If you haven't got time, that's also cool. And yeah, if you could tell your colleagues about the podcast, and also, if possible, don't forget to subscribe. And I'd love to hear your feedback. If you'd like to speak on the podcast or be a guest or you think I'm asking the wrong questions, anything, I'd be super interested to hear what you think. So please email me at tom@automatedcreative.net. That's TOM at, I'm not going to bother spelling it. Anyway, you'll work it out. Thanks so much.